Very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's uLaw webinar. The topic or title for today's webinar is Getting Ready for Your Law Society Audit. This particular webinar has been accredited for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits in the provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and New Brunswick. I repeat, this particular webinar is accredited for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits in the provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and New Brunswick. And I request you to use the chat window at all given times to ask any questions that you may have. And you are able to use this particular title, Getting Ready for Law Society Audit, as the title to claim your CPD credits. Okay, so with every other uLaw webinar, we have a very similar agenda for today's webinar. We're going to specifically focus on the Law Society audit process. What does it take to be ready for that process? The key pieces of information that you need to have available during that process, the kinds of questions and reports that you're being asked for as part of that as well. Regardless of how you produce these documents, it's important for you to appreciate what is being asked for as part of this process. Okay? How do you prepare for it? What are the key aspects of the review, such as practice, financial, or technological or technology review? And looking at how important a legal accounting aspect to your overall bookkeeping solution is important, so that you can make yourself audit-proof, be very thorough with your numbers, which are critical to the overall audit process as well. Okay? Okay. Now, you know for a fact that if you're a new practitioner within the first 12 to 18 months, that you are going to be put through the spot audit or an audit process so that the Law Society understands that you're on the right path of compliance, that you're maintaining, especially around financial bookkeeping, all of the books needed to tell your story about how compliant you are maintaining. Critically important for practitioners that are entertaining retainers and money in trust. Yeah. But beyond that too, knowing what's expected as part of this process just makes it easier for you to understand and appreciate what needs to go behind the success factors of preparedness that's needed for that audit when it comes. So really, when we define the purpose, we're talking about why this process is in place. And from what we understand from the Law Society's website, of course, across all provinces, we believe that the audit process really promotes a high quality of record keeping within legal business or law firms, right? By being able to tell the story or answer the questions around record keeping requirements that have been well detailed and explained as part of the Law Society's bookkeeping compliance. That's the purpose. And to the question of why me, and as I mentioned, it's really not the question of why me, it's really the question of the need for every legal practitioner to be in line with the expected compliance. And hence, given the fact that it's going to be you at some point in time, the answer really, or the question really is, how best can I position myself and how best can I acquaint myself with the right knowledge, tools, help, expertise to deliver the answers and the storytelling for the questions that I know that I'm going to be asked for at some point in time during my legal practice. And we're going to talk about how best you can prepare yourself. If you're a seasoned campaigner, then understanding rooms for improvement. If you're a student or someone who's just recently started the legal business, really appreciating the various factors that go behind this audit process. Okay? So cutting to the chase, what are you being audited on? Okay, what aspects of your legal business are going to be questioned on? And for simplicity's sake and just for easier, I would say easier categorization, we've kind of broken it down into maybe 4 buckets of reviews. We talk about, of course, the practice review, and what we're encompassing within the practice review is aspects of client management, file or matter management, and procedural guidelines around documents, templates, such as retainer letter, statement of activity, non-engagement letter, and so on and so forth, right? What kind of templatization or what kind of document thoroughness do you have that are predominantly client-facing, that makes you and the Law Society look good in front of the public eye? And how best are you managing your customer information for both compliant and non-compliant needs? How best are you managing your files and matters, both for compliant and non-compliant needs? So that's what we call as the first level of review around the practice. And then comes the most important and the most highlighted, dreaded financial review. And to be honest, with the advent of technology and the tools such as uLaw that provide you legal accounting, there are of course other tools as well, but tools that are specifically focused around legal accounting pretty much give you an opportunity to deliver these reports at click of buttons, as long as you are ensuring that the data entry of your day-to-day business's activities are entered into a system of record, such as a legal accounting system, right? But having said that, when it comes to financial review, what we're talking about are your 2 major financial vehicles, trust and general, and talking about specific Form 9A documents around, or Bylaw 9 documents, such as your ledgers, your journals, your fee book, most importantly, your reconciliation statements for a date or time period. Typically, on a monthly basis, as part of your bookkeeping, you are required to generate these set of books right from ledgers, journals, reconciliation, so on and so forth. In addition to that, of course, there could be certain jurisdictional documents that we've discussed before, as I mentioned, Form 9A, etc. Right? So the financial review becomes an important aspect that a lot of the legal practices focus on, and will highlight what is part of that financial review as well. Now, the technology review, which we've documented here, now these may often be questions that are being asked for the Law Society just to help you understand the preparedness that's needed to protect yourself and the business from any failures that you may have when it comes to managing information. Because what's critical about this information that you're managing is it's not just your information, it's client-related information, and hence the technology review is more of a quick checklist of safety guards that you can protect yourself from any catastrophic technology failures, as you can see on the slide. So questions or checklists such as, who is your service provider when it comes to managing your data or your client data? Where is the data being hosted? Do we follow the Patriot Act of hosting the data within the soil of Canada, for example? How easy is it to retrieve the data as and when needed? What are the backup policies to ensure that there is a 99.9% retainability of my data? What happens if something were to go wrong? How easy is it for me to retrieve a local copy of the data for myself and for my legal firm? Right? And what are the risks or rewards around the technologies that you use on a day-to-day basis to manage your critical information for your legal business? The 4th bucket that we have, that we see auditors often question legal practitioners come under the professional and time management reviews. Of course, I'm not going to go too much into the professional aspect of it, but things such as ensuring that you've kept up with your professional needs, such as CPD hours like today. There could also be conduct guidelines that the Law Society is often acting upon. Sometimes it's based on complaints. Sometimes it's based on just the general understanding of how best the policies, rules that you have within your firm, especially if it's a growing, larger legal firm, about the different conduct guidelines that you have in place for you and your employees and your staff members. Okay? And that's again to ensure that you are upkeeping this high level of standard that's required to represent the law societies of your provinces. And time management is another aspect of it where it's really not to catch you on the wrong foot, but it's hopefully to better appreciate how you're managing time and whether you're having the time to enjoy, relax, and be able to give back to your business in a more prepared mind, rather than having to always scurry for work, always being tensed about certain things. Rather, how best are you managing time, your pro bono hours, the time that you take off, etc. And the reason for that is often, I'm sure you have a better appreciation for this. This job of being a legal practitioner, the fact that you have to wear many hats, can be time consuming, can be stressful, and the burnout ratio is very high, especially within the first 24 months of any business, leave alone the legal business. So ensuring that you're doing the right things to enjoy what you're offering as a practice is very critical. And where we come as a provider, one of the choice of providers for you is wanting you to think about the audit on a day-to-day basis and build the needed tools or services or help to build the compliance needs well within the DNA of the firm. So knowing what you know in terms of the high-level expectations of the 4 different review components of an audit, the next question really is, all right, I know what's expected, kind of know, the boundary within which I'm going to be asked for questions. Now, how best can I prepare myself to answer those questions? Okay, so these are often called as the proactive nature of how you run your business, knowing the expected results of an audit. So if you don't have a proper retainer letter, there's a high chance of you being asked for it, and when you're being asked for it, if you don't have it and you're not prepared, then of course that's on you. So knowing that they're going to ask you for it, why not prepare it as a proactive measure? Knowing that they're going to ask you for a general ledger or a reconciliation statement, why not be prepared to deal with it early enough? That's really the question. How best can we do that, right? And we firmly believe this, that audits, again, are not necessarily designed to catch you on the wrong foot or scare you or your firm, right? They're really a great opportunity for the Law Society to identify issues early enough and correct them early enough so that you're on track with meeting this high expectation that's expected out of the Law Society as a general body in itself, and you as a legal practitioner who are a critical component of that Law Society. Why are these audits being done? Because you're representing in many ways and communicating and corresponding with the general public that you're serving, ensuring that you as the ambassador of legal practice within a certain jurisdiction are doing everything in your power to deliver a very high-end, professional, well-conducted business that's in line with the conduct guidelines of the Law Society as well as the professional ethics that you offer to your client. As I said, knowing what you know in terms of preparedness for the audit, why not start from day one and pretty much have it in the DNA so that you don't have to worry about having to templatize and repeat for each and every client. Once you make it part of the DNA, you're not repeating this, it just becomes part of the practice. And as easy as it may seem, where we believe there's a great component for success is writing down a very time-based checklist that can help you be very focused on what you're getting out of that checklist for a weekly, monthly, quarterly, or a yearly time period. As much as ledgers and journals and especially reconciliations are asked for on a monthly period, we are now encouraging our clients to also introduce checkpoints on your reconciliation on a weekly period. When you're doing it on a weekly period, then you don't have to do a lot of catch-up at the end of the month, especially if there are errors that you have to deal with. Okay, so as much as you see trust and general ledgers as part of your monthly financial checklist, with the advent of technology and the ability within tools such as uLaw, you can actually keep an eye on it even on a weekly basis. Reviewing your financial institutions transactions, that's something we recommend doing on a weekly basis or a weekend, right? Especially the trust account, keeping an eye on that. And the reason we share that is sometimes if you haven't advised your bank or your financial institutions, if let's say a bank fee or a charge is being withdrawn from that trust account, if you can catch it early enough during that weekly review, you can easily rectify that issue, and that issue will never creep up at the end of the month as a bank error that you have to deal with as part of that reconciliation process. If they deducted that $10 as part of your bank fees, you can call them within the second week of that month and rectify it and have them deposit that $10 back and withdraw that $10 from your general account. So when you reconcile that trust account, the -10 and the +10 pretty much reconciles on its own. You don't have to deal with it as a bank error at the end of the month. That's just an example. Of course, by reviewing your reconciliation for your business on a weekly basis, you at the end of the month deliver a reconciliation report, which is an accumulation of the work and the transactions that have occurred during that time period. And once you've done your reconciliation, you can be very confident about generating the required trust and general ledger documents, journal documents, etc. From a quarterly standpoint, again, not all legal firms look at quarterly checklists, primarily based on the nature of the clients and the nature of their own business. But if your legal office has to deal with clients that are long-standing, or maybe the cycle of delivery of your service is larger than, let's say, 3 to 4 months, then a good hygienic checklist for your quarterly practice management would be ensuring that you have file-related procedural documents drafted, delivering specific documents on a quarterly basis to your clients to keep them up to date of all the activities that have happened within their file for that date range. And I've mentioned this before, so some businesses may ask you for a bill of costs, especially if you're dealing with organizations, not individuals. You may have statement of activities to deliver, both individuals as well as companies that you work with. Could be the invoices that you deliver. Could be receipts. Sometimes businesses today are asking for payment receipts to be sent out on a regular time period. So these are all good client-facing documents that relate to communication, transparency, and correspondence, and meeting those professional commitments as a legal business through these checklists. And as a yearly practice, of course, you all deliver your statement of record back to legal or law societies. But beyond doing that, a quarterly and a yearly practice would really be to look at the hygiene of your business. What's your P&L? How much of revenue are you generating? What are the sources of revenue so that you can better focus on those areas of practices? What marketing events or marketing strategies or source of contacts are helping bring in more leads and potential prospective clients into your business? We have clients today that are starting to review the effectiveness of a certain matter based on the area of practice, so they understand the pros and cons of doing that client intake at that time, sometimes even prior. So they know, for example, the use of technology, that over a period of time, they have the maturity and the appreciation for, if it's a small claims matter, I know this is going to be my average profitability, this is the average time that it takes to deliver it, and these are the top 3 documents that I have to deliver. If it's a family matter, I know this is what I should expect in terms of days of sale, this is what I should expect in terms of cycles, the amount of documents needed to deliver, etc. So almost becomes a science in how you're dealing with your clients and the files. That comes through these reviews that you do to your own business, the introspections that you do to the data within your business, and then taking action that are profitable, meaningful, and allows you to correct mistakes as soon as they occur. And make it part of the overall DNA, as we call it, as part of your overall preparedness DNA, both for audit and non-audit needs. Okay, so we've kind of gone in about 15, 20 minutes into this. I'll do a quick review of everything that we've discussed over the last 5 slides. Again, for those friends who just joined us, today's webinar is accredited for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits in the provinces of Ontario, New Brunswick, and British Columbia. The title for today's webinar is Getting Ready for Law Society Audit. And as part of the agenda, we're really looking at the audit process that the law societies have and you as legal practitioners have to go through at some point in time if you're legal business with them, and knowing that you will go through it, really the question is how best can you be prepared for the main components of that audit process, starting with your practice, financial, technology, and professional and time management reviews. And we're looking at a starting point of a checklist that you could potentially have to review the transactional behavior of your business from a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly standpoint. Now we're going to do a little deeper dive into those individual review components, starting with the practice management. In fact, we deliver a webinar called as Everything Practice Management, which again is accredited for CPD credits and is available on our YouTube channel. And I know I'm going to be delivering it later this year as well, but you can always review it on our YouTube channel and still take credit for it as long as you've finished the entire 1 hour. But this is maybe a subset of what we delivered through that webinar, which is as part of the practice management checklist, we start off by talking about the importance of client service and communication, because that really is your starting point in engaging with a prospective client and delivering the promise and delivering the services needed to ensure you're successful in taking that client towards the pathway of success. So when it comes to a checklist, if I were to turn the tables and for you to review that checklist, let's look at the first intake communication correspondence opportunity, which is taking information from a prospective client that's important for you to kickstart a file or a matter. So we start off with a simple process, whether it's online web forms, whether it's printed PDF forms, or if someone's just calling you to give you the information, however best you're already established to take this information. Do you have a system of record today that can capture this information easily? And what types of information points are you capturing? Of course, everyone's capturing first name, last name, email, and phone number. But are you capturing, or given that you have an opportunity to do so, are you capturing, let's say, a source of contact, area of practice that you, for the client to share with you? How fast are you able to react to as soon as you receive that information? That all comes as part of the practice management checklist, right? So once you receive that information, do you have a standard procedure guideline for what happens next? Are you checking for conflict? Who within your business is checking for conflict? Especially if it's not just a solo practitioner. Do you have, let's say, the aspect of matter management prior to creating a file? How many different templates do you currently have for retainers or engagement letters based on the areas of practices that you deal with? So if you as a firm offer family, real estate, and LATB as your areas of expertise, and so the question is, as part of the practice management review or checklist, do you have 3 different templates for that retainer letter, or is it just a single document that pretty much serves all purposes? Or do you have a separate stream of documents pertaining to retainer-based businesses compared to non-retainer-based businesses? So again, these are really important questions to ask yourself. Utilize tools, whether it's uLaw or otherwise, to help build these templates for you, so making it, again, part of that DNA that we were talking about. So that the next time that you're being audited for or need a retainer review document, you can confidently retrieve that document based on the area of practice in which you're delivering that service. Right? Checklists around how do you manage retainer? Do you take cash retainers? There are certain businesses, even though you can take up to $7,500 in cash retainer, are not entertaining cash retainers these days. They're saying, I need some electronic form or otherwise, a check maybe that's trackable. Because if you take a cash retainer, then this just adds more work for you and your firm. You need to deposit that into your own pocket, and then you have 24 hours before you deposit that into your trust account. You have to deliver a cash retainer receipt. You have to show for the movement of money from your pocket into trust, right? So what is the checklist around how best you manage retainers? Do you have a process to manage client complaints? So what that really means is, how is your retainer document drafted? Do you have a paragraph, or do you have maybe a couple of paragraphs that explains the rules of engagement? Talking about the opportunity that you have and for your client to have that open correspondence that we're talking about in terms of transparency in the client service and communication as a bucket in general. Do you have a paragraph around non-engagement? So you have retained this client, but maybe they haven't paid you on time. Do you have it in your document and give you room to use that as a vehicle to non-engage that client? And if that is the case, do you have, again, a template for non-engagement? I know this seems overwhelming. It seems like, okay, can we just get it done with? But these are good questions to ask yourself at this particular stage, still early in the year, so that you can start to make that as part of your DNA. So under practice review comes the next bucket. We've just looked at client and communication. So intake, retainer, everything that goes behind it, how best you manage that. You have created the file, you've done through all that, you've signed the retainer, you've got the money in trust, you've provided the trust receipt. Now what? The next step within your workflow begins where you have to create a file, associate that file to a practitioner within your business. If it's a solo business, then it's just yourself doing all of that. What is your file naming convention? Do you know that you have to ensure that the file names are easy to retrieve, are unique in its nature, even if it's for the same client? It's cross-indexed so that you can do your conflict searches with confidence. It clearly tells you if you've dealt or created a matter for a client by the name Steve Smith. And how fast can you react to those conflict searches, right? And also part of the matter management is it is pertaining to a certain area of practice, and hence goes back to your retainer letter of how best you've clarified the fee structure, the expectations around retainer top-ups, or expectations around payments. So maybe your expected payment cycle is 15 days from the time you raise an invoice. What course of action would you take if the client did not pay you in that time? Is there an interest involved? Are there penalties, right? Do you have a process within your business that allows you to better categorize your files so that your eyes are actively looking at the more active files that need more attention? Are you able to categorize the files as closed? And it doesn't have to be these nomenclatures, it can be anything, but gives you the ability to fine-tune your focus on what's most important, and also have the room to have these historical data elements within your business, making it conflict searches easier and faster and more deep, rather than having to do this manually. If you just have one or two clients, it's very easy, but as you grow your business within the second, third year, you start to see that the Steve Smiths are more than a dozen. Then you need a system of record that tells you more clearly the differences between the different Steve Smiths. What is your, again, pertaining to the retainer letter, the fee structure, what is your docketing style? How are you docketing it? Is it yourself? Is it a bunch of individuals that are going to collaborate on a matter? Do you have different fee rates for different practitioners within your firm? What does an invoice template look like? And is it following the guidelines of the retainer? And I'm sure you're already doing this, right? I know I go on and on about this particular subject, and in a very subliminal way, you're already doing this because you have to. But when you take a step back to understand if there are procedural guidelines and a system of record that is dictating the delivery of these services and the delivery of these documents, then you're starting to be smarter in how you're delivering the audit preparedness for your firm. So we're going back to that dreaded word that I've used at least 8 times today called DNA. So you're adding back to the DNA so you don't have to repeat yourself uniquely for every new particular client. You're not reinventing the wheel. I didn't want to say it, but it's really come down to that. Clients today are, of course, demanding for more clarity from legal practitioners, and hence it's very critical for you to start thinking of how you deliver your service as a legal firm from the eyes of your client. Clarity right from the retainer letter to the closure letter, everything in between. If you can prepare yourself to deliver the documents along with the services, keeping the audit needs in mind, then you're already prepared mentally to be audit ready. Now it's just converting that into a system of record, and I say that does not have to be a legal management, legal accounting, practice management system. This could be an Excel sheet that's automated enough. And the reason for automation too is not to sell you a software. The reason for automation is that it's come down to that, because time is of essence, time is money, and these are mundane tasks that you have to rinse and repeat the same way for every client, with a few changes to the nuance based on the scope of work. And hence, if you were to do this manually every time, that's going to lead to opportunities left on the table, and hence, knowing that you can automate these tasks. What cannot be automated is how you best represent your client at court, because that's where you are good at. What cannot be automated, as much as we try, is the IQ that you bring to the table of how best to represent that case and win that case for your client. What can be automated are all the procedural documents and the known audit requirements that you have to deliver anyways. And many times this becomes a major block in our mind. The fact that I have to deal with the ledger and journal tends to kind of cover up, sometimes take your own mind space, and you're unable to focus on more proactive work. And hence we're saying there is no free lunch. There is certainly a cost associated with it. Whether you pay up front to make lives easier or you pay for it at the end of the day because you're in a hurry to be compliant, that's what we're trying to change. That behavior is what we're looking to hopefully change for the betterment of your lifestyle, your business management. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but sometimes we just have to repeat it many times so that we can all agree that this is a good idea. Financial management. Of course, you have many different avenues through which you can accomplish the needs of this financial checklist. You could have your own accountant, your own bookkeeper. Of course, you don't necessarily always have to have the math in your mind, but as a business owner, it helps to stay on top of your numbers so that you're not always dependent on someone else to tell you how much of money you're making. And that's why accounting systems, legal accounting systems, whatever system that you may be comfortable using, if you can invest a little bit of time to learn it and learn it right and use it right, you may not have to always deliver all of the documents yourself. If you can afford to, you can always get third-party help, but you will be a very confident owner of your own data. So even if a bookkeeper gives you a piece of document, you can validate that and you can clearly see if the information provided to you is of quality and at the level that you already know that it should be in. So when it comes to financial management, again, a checklist that we like for you to keep in mind that's important. Following that retainer letter is the fee structure. So a $1,000 retainer, is there a provincial tax included, right? What is your per hour billing, if that's the structure we're looking at? If it's a flat fee, how much is that? If it's a mix of billable time and flat rate, without HST, what does that look like? How often would you be generating invoices? Would it include disbursements? Are disbursements out of your trust account, or do you have disbursements taken out of your general account and need to recover? So much goes into the financial transactions of your legal business on a day-to-day basis. And each financial transaction pretty much falls into a certain bucket, whether it's trust or general, incoming or outgoing, and that needs to be reported back in the form of ledgers and journals. It's as simple as that. The reconciliation really comes down so that you can validate back to yourself and eventually at one day to the auditor saying, I'm very confident about the money that came in and left. I'm comparing it with my system of record with the actual bank, which is the source of truth. And then clearly telling you and articulating through the form of that reconciliation document that the numbers match my trust ledger and my client's trust ledger or client's trust amount listing is exactly what the balance in my trust bank is. And that's what the auditor wants. If there's $100 in your trust account, they just want to know, how did that $100 come into your trust account? Who do you owe that $100 back? Right? And disbursements become very important, not just from an audit perspective, and I've shared this many times. Disbursement, we've often seen, becomes a critical component of your own P&L. Because sometimes whether you're, not going to say lethargic, that's a very strong term, but often we find there's a level of procrastination, again, the mental fatigue that you have to deal with so many things. And often disbursements can become a critical loss component of a business transaction. A great profitable file can be non-profitable within minutes if you haven't accounted and recovered your disbursements. Especially if you've not dealt it in a trust vehicle, and if you've paid for it and you don't recover it in time, then yes, it does become part of that loss component, right? So again, ensuring that you have your own best interest in mind with the flavor of compliance built into it is all we're looking for. And if you have registered for taxes, then again, you're going like, okay, this guy's just killing me on a Friday afternoon. But yeah, if you have jurisdictional taxes to deal with, because you are a business owner, there are two major aspects to financial management. One is the financial aspects of revenue coming in from your clients, falling under the buckets of trust and general. Then comes the component of expenses that can also fall under both client-related and your own office-related. And the client-related expenses can be under trust general. Your office-related expenses can only be under general. Right? You can't pay for your phone bill from your trust account. That's misappropriation. Even if you've sometimes done it. If you've done it twice, then that's frowned upon. So ensuring that you're not doing that. So when it comes to managing expenses around office, you have an expense book, for example, which is what we call as a sandwich document or a combination document, because the transactions in that expense book come from both your legal accounting aspect and your business accounting or office accounting aspect. So you can have a court fee as part of that expense book. You can also have a purchase of a laptop under that expense book. You can have HST in that entire expense book. Whether you charge your client your going to definitely be charged HST or PST or GST, depending on where you buy. Or if you don't have that, you bought it in a state where there's no local taxes, then you need to account for that as well as part of your expense. And then filing taxes makes it easier for you if you have these documents prepared ahead of time and made part of the DNA. Because that's another mandate. One is to have the Law Society audit, but the last thing is also to report back to our friendly CRA, where you need to report whether it's your business taxes. We're not even going into income tax. We're not talking about that. We're talking business, and hence there's a HST filing, for example, in the province of Ontario. You could also have your own business income related filing as well. Okay, with another 15 minutes left, I would like to take a quick pause. I know I have a few more slides to review, and just take a quick pause. This could be a bit tiring. Just to ask if there are any questions or any feedback on everything that or everything that I've just spoken about, and hopefully I've not put you to sleep. Any questions at all? I'll take a quick minute to pause and sip of water. And please use the chat window to ask us of any questions that you may have. Okay, so I'll continue. Yep, I think good question. You are able to upload your own retainer template. You just have to reach out to our support staff, and we'll be more than happy to help you with it. In a couple of weeks, we're also delivering a webinar that talks about how you can create your own templates with the uLaw. That makes it very interesting. You don't even have to reach out to the support staff. You need just training to know how to use the uLaw data attributes to create your own forms. So there's two different ways in which we do it today. And please do use the support at uLawPractice.com email to reach out to us on that. Yes, so two questions. We do have this particular webinar being recorded and will be available to you at the end of today's session, I think as early as Monday. In terms of checklists and guidelines, when you log into uLaw, and I'm just using uLaw as an example because I think it's a question from a uLaw client. Right under Help, if you haven't already given this a try, where you see the settings, hello, you have the help. I'm just going to wait for computer thing has COVID, so it's just a bit slow and dull. Just going to give it a minute. Oh, there you go. Sure enough, security, and this is very critical to us, ensuring that it's really Roger Moore who's logging in. And I'll get to that question real quick. So I think a quick question to the support team. If you can provide a quick answer, is there a search for outstanding trust transfers? I think that's a quick question. Good question there. In terms of the ability of the complexity of the use, the reason why initially a system such as uLaw comes across complex is because of all those wonderful things that I was sharing with you, because we manage it from soup to nuts, cradle to grave. I only know those two adverbs. So it's not just a practice management system, or it's not a CRM. uLaw is trying to do the heavy lifting of making it simple on you to enter transactions where we can automatically fill the buckets needed behind the scene and help create the documents needed for the auditors behind the scene, and hence learning how to enter data right is, yes, not as easy as picking up an iPad, but what we promise is after a period of time becomes habit, becomes part of the DNA, and you're going to enjoy the benefit, the ease with which you're able to deliver documents, whether it's for an auditor, for a client, for yourself. The fact that we're able to provide business information to you on an Apple Watch, all that comes with you training yourself to enter data into the system. We promise to give you the information back. And yes, you're more than happy to migrate information back. That's definitely very much possible, and we've done that for several hundred clients now. So let me just quickly log in. I'm going to just, because this was a question that was asked, I'll showcase this to you and go back to my slide share. Alrighty. So I go under Help, and we have a compliance guide, audit guide. I don't know if you've looked at that. Pretty much gives you the checklist to keep in mind. Okay? And this can easily be converted into checklists that you create within uLaw. Like we have our events you could have within your calendar. So for example, you could say on the 26th, it's not related to any file. This is something that you're setting yourself up for, let's say at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. But this would sync up with your phone, and your phone will remind you wonderfully at 6 a.m. that you have to review your bank statements. Similarly, you could set this up for, whatever, right? Reconciliation. This could be your monthly checklist. There could also be a checklist related to a file. Delivering a statement of activity can be related to Adira Smith, Adira versus John matter. So we do have those checklists both for compliance, for audit and compliance, for audit readiness and for compliance in general. Okay? All right, so let me get back to my slide share if there aren't any more questions. I'm just going to quickly put a note to my support to answer that question around outstanding trust transfers. If you can't get that to you today, we'll make sure we email you that answer. Okay. Okay, so we are starting to look at retainer because that becomes kind of the Bible or the centrifugal document around the entire matter or your relationship with a client. Just want to quickly highlight it with just another few more 8 or 10 minutes remaining. Some of the things that we have helped our clients, and we've seen often where it's being missed if it's done manually, is around client obligation. Everyone gets their nature and scope of work. It's, whether it's related to a specific area of practice, what should be expected as the capability that you offer, that's perfect. Client obligation is where you're telling your client that they need to pay you on time. They need to pay retainer top-ups on time. If they don't pay, so the implications. Another thing we often see that's missed is the frequency of communication. This is your license to tell your client how often you are going to be transparent and how wonderful your firm is when it comes to providing data in a periodic time. Whether that's invoices, whether it's other documents that you require, receipts, whatever information, emails, text, WhatsApp messages, frequency of communication is a paragraph we highly recommend within your retainer letter that allows you to have better control of the modes of communication and the frequency of that communication. We definitely see termination clauses in most of the retainers today, and we have that in many of our templates. Post-COVID, the use of consultants and third-party agents we started to see reduce quite a bit, but it used to be a big thing back in the days, and it still is in some shape or form. But if you are going to be using third-party consultant help, it certainly helps to put that in the retainer, saying that you may use the help of the standby or stand-in as part of your business. And if so, here's the rate, here's the rules of the engagement, right? And last, we're seeing this we've been doing this now for almost 14 years. Risks of using technology was never a huge paragraph 14 years back, but it certainly is a definite paragraph that we see within most of the retainer agreements that we create, as well as what customers bring in as templates. So we see a lot of WhatsApp, a lot of text now being introduced as methods of communication. Right? Email, of course, is still the standard for that, but we're seeing text and WhatsApp kind of more often these days. And this is a quick checklist for you as a business, so that if you have this checklist, it's more of an operational checklist. This operational checklist has implications to your own audit guideline as well. So if you are raising your invoices on time, means you are capturing taxes on time, capturing revenue on time, hopefully recovering disbursements on time, right? And all of these have cascading effects on the different buckets in which they fall. If you have failed to raise an invoice in the month of March for work put in March, for a disbursement that was dispersed in March, let's say you're only raising it in April, again, it's not the end of the world, but what it certainly means is the missed opportunity to be profitable in the month of March. It's missed opportunity because you now have to reconcile that, carry that forward into the next month if there are trust transactions. A little bit more convoluted when you close the month of March for reconciliation because it has outstanding. Especially if there are cases where the client, or if there's a bank error, if there's some kind of a conflict, it's best that you do the best you can to capture especially money as soon as it occurs. So if you've had a disbursement, most of the retainers we talk about, we encourage you to make it, disbursements are recovered as and when it happens. Unless the nature of work or the nature of matter specifically dictates that you do so in a specific manner. Like if you're dealing with corporate clients, or if you're dealing with estate, or maybe there's no disbursement, then it's not even an issue. Right? Another thing we see often when it comes to financial checklist is paying yourself from trust. So there's this important task that you have to do to earn and make the money, especially if there's a retainer, is generate the invoice and then do what's called an eligible trust transfer of moving money from trust to general. If you've not raised an invoice, again, it's not going to directly impact yet. But if you have raised an invoice, that means within a stipulated time that you do have to move that money from trust to general. Of course, what that means is that there's tax implications because now you're showing revenue. But then that's just part and parcel of the business, right? But doing so within a specific time range impacts audit readiness. Okay, we're at the top of the hour, and I'm just going to finish up with this particular slide. I do apologize that I pondered too much on financial. Technology, again, as we spoke before, clearly articulating, depending on who you invest the technological services with. If you're using Google for backup, understanding their SLA. If you're using uLaw for your practice management, understanding what we offer as our SLA, service level agreement, questioning the different service providers of that, sharing that in sometimes within your retainer agreement. As I said, risks and rewards of certain technologies that you use. If you're using WhatsApp, then of course Facebook, for example, understanding the rules of the game, any risks associated with that. And knowing that the accounting requirements for your legal practice, especially around trust, has a component of both legal and business accounting related, that's why we encourage you to explore the use of a legal accounting system that's best suited to deal with numbers coming in from both these different angles. Okay? Legal accounting system is purpose-built to deal with the financial needs of a legal firm, and hence the term. And it's not just a general accounting system that can combine both these different sources of data, right? And ensuring that you have a track record of the templates that are needed for your ledgers and journals. And we have a separate webinar that talks about trust ledgers, general ledgers on our YouTube channel as well. So knowing what goes into those documents is critical so that you can deliver those documents when you're being asked for. And don't hear it just from us. If you go into Google, our friend, you could search for spot audit, audit checklist, and bookkeeping guidelines, my top 3 searches for legal firms across all provinces. If I go into bookkeeping guidelines, Ontario, there it is, right? The LSO has it. The same thing for BC across all provinces. Each and every province. There you go. Has documents related to the 4 major buckets that we discussed as part of today's webinar. Okay, so I want to be mindful of the time that I'm asking. Today's webinar is accredited for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits. The title again is Getting Ready for Law Society Audit, where we've kind of looked at the practice, financial, last but not the least, the technology, and professional or time management component of your reviews. Okay, so I thank you once again for joining. Please feel free to email us at support@uLawPractice.com. So beyond webinars and beyond this outreach, we're very excited to help, whether you're a client or not, doesn't matter, to share what we know and learn from you as well. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar next Friday.